barely conscious should know that. So here's the solution. I mean, it's very interesting. There was this great saint that lived in India some 400 or 500 years ago, and he was an amazing scholar. Even at the age of 10 to 15, he was such a scholar. You know, in India back then, scholar didn't mean to. Scholar meant to know life. You know, scholar meant to know, be very, very wise. You know, be very wise. In other words, you have answers to questions about life, you know. And nowadays, you know, there's very few people like that. That you have a coherent philosophical understanding of life. You have a picture in which everything fits in. So he was brilliant. I mean, at the age of between 10 and 15, he became what they call Digvijay, which Vijay means glory, victory. In other words, people would come talk with him, and after a few minutes, they would just, you know, offer their respects. You know, you're amazing. You know, I give my life to you. You know, instruct me. You know, guide me. You know, you're so superior. So what's very interesting, all throughout his lifetime, he did not write a single book, whereas all of his contemporaries wrote libraries of books. India is very, very proficient when it comes to philosophy, which Brits kind of try to cover over, but you know, as in Bengal they say, you can't hide the moon in the basket. You know, it's too shiny. So he wrote only 8 little verses, yeah, and one of them deals with life. I mean, they all deal with life. On a very profound level, and I'll just mention one because it's you know, each one has a very, very great philosophical background. We don't have that time. I'm trying to finish all this in a few minutes. So he said, and this is revolutionary. It's outrageous. I don't think anyone thinks in such terms because, you know, we're so indoctrinated, so, you know, devoid of humility and just filled with pride, you know. Pride while just absolutely being ignorant of even basic concepts in life. But there you go. So he said, first thing, one should be very tolerant. First thing, this is first thing, you know, when you're in traffic, you have to be very tolerant. He said you should be tolerant like a tree. Why tree? Because tree, you know, tree tolerates, you know, like, you know, rain, heat, you know, people come, you know, loving couple come, you know, Joe loves Mary, you know, and he carves it in the tree. And the tree always gives, you know, gives the shade, gives the fruits, gives the leaves, and then people come, chop it down, you know, gives the firewood, like that, it always gives. So it's very, very tolerant. So in traffic, you have to be very tolerant. In life, you have to be very tolerant. Why do you need to be very tolerant? Tolerant doesn't mean that, you know, you're just like, you know, stupid moron, you know, whatever people say, you just take it, you know, you don't protest, you know. No, that's not what it means. Tolerant means to be strong, you know. You know, stuff happens, but you have to be mature enough. You have to be mature enough to remain emotionally and intellectually sober. In other words, it doesn't jerk you, you know. It doesn't shake you. So you have to be very tolerant. He said this is the first thing about life. If you don't, so you see, in other words, he's saying that you should look at life as yoga. You know, and when life takes weird turns, you know, then don't just like freak out and complain to, you know, whoever you want to complain. And nowadays people want to complain to everybody. But rather you have to take this as yoga. Yoga means you're exercising your ability to tolerate. As a matter of fact, yogis traditionally in India would expose themselves to extremes, like meditating in winter in a freezing cold river, and then in summer, I've seen this many times, sits in a I don't know how he does it, sits in a blazing sun, on the sand, and that sand, you cannot walk on it. I mean, you could fry stuff on it. I mean, it's so hot. Once my shoes got stolen in India, I could not walk back. Had huge blisters, I tell you. It was terrible. It was so hot. Sand was just like... and he's sitting there, and then he surrounds himself with fire, lights a bunch of fires, you know, and then he meditates. No umbrella. I mean, his body must be, I don't know. Anyways, he does it, you know. Or sometimes they hook themselves up, you know, hooks like. And, you know, to an ignorant eye, this is like, what the heck is with this guy, you know, he really lost it. But the first point is that you should learn to be tolerant. And if you don't know how to tolerate, you just lose it at every single thing. And I tell you, people lose it nowadays. In traffic, you get cut off. Mother... You know. And in life we do the same thing. Someone tells you something, like the other day I was down here in the shopping mall and says, "Hey, you're Mahat, you know, from the famous Krishna lounge, you know." I mean, that's what he said. You know, and I was like, yeah, sure, you know, whatever you want to say, you know. Then he said, you know, the Krishna lounge is so great, and I like how you sing, like, you know, this, that, blah, 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 this, that. And then he looked at me, but you know what? You're one big jerk. You know, you're an asshole. And he went to, you know. And I'm like looking at him, and you know, then I had to remind myself of philosophy. But you know, people do these things to us. You know, someone tells something bad to us, and we all feel bad. Or if they say good, we feel great about it. It means we're not tolerant. It means we're not tolerant. We're just behaving like an ignorant, not ignorant, but you know, how do you call someone who's not grown up? Like a child? Immature. Like an immature child.
Brad.
Yeah, like an immature child. Life is way more than that. So anyways, we could say way more about tolerance. But it's the first thing he said, you should be tolerant. And then he said, second thing, the only way by which you can be tolerant all the time like this is that you do not think yourself very important. Now, in the Western Hemisphere, this is a horrible thing to say to somebody. Come on, you're so important. As a matter of fact, when you go to school, they'll never tell you, not good enough, you're not good. You know, they always have this positive attitude. Oh, great, 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 but you need to improve here, here, and here. And therefore, we just grow up like extremely puffed up. Like there's some social studies show, for example, that you know, an average American thinks himself great in math, while you know he scores like really low. Whereas an average Chinese thinks, you know, my math's so bad, but he's like a billion times better. Anyways, but in the long run, what it does, it makes people very puffed up, and therefore makes them intolerant, and therefore makes them immature. Therefore said, don't think yourself very important. And I mean, think about it. Every moment there's billions and billions living entities popping in and out of existence. And we think ourselves very, very important. We're just a blip in time. I mean, our little lifetime. And this is not, I'm not trying to, like, you know, make everyone, you know, lower their self-esteem. No, but let's just be objective. Actually, everyone is very valuable. That's also said in the Vedas, that although you're not valuable, at the same time you are. But that kind of sounds like a contradiction, but that is there. So, you know, there's no point in thinking ourselves very, very important. Okay, what's the psychological reaction when we think ourselves very important? Well, we want respect. You know, as a matter of fact, more important we feel, you know, more respect we want. And less respect we get, more disturbed we are. You know, this is just you know, like a really gross manifestation of false ego. Anyways, we could go on and on and on about self-esteem, but he said you should think yourself just like a blade of grass. You know, like not very important. Then, the third thing it said, you should always look to give respect to everyone else. Now this completely contradicts material paradigm where we're always ego-centered. We're always self-centered. As a matter of fact, from the moment we wake up, we think, you know, I'm very important, and what should I do now for my pleasure? You know, we never, like, first time I read a magazine